friends. Welcome to Lima, Peru. Once again, welcome to my home and to another history session, another session dedicated to Peru. And in this occasion, also another South American country, a brother country to Peru, Bolivia. So today we're going to discuss the differences and similarities between these countries. What are the elements that make both countries be so similar for moments, but also which ones are the similarities, which ones are the differences, which ones are the things that also determine the uniqueness of both territories. And well, it is a pleasure to have you today. It is a pleasure to have the opportunity of talking about this topic, and especially as a Peruvian, as an official tour guide, it is an honor also to dedicate a chapter of our, let's say, series dedicated to understanding South America to Bolivia. So now let's flip the camera on my side. I would like to say hi to you all. Hola, hola, welcome to another video, another history lecture. My name is Vanessa Vasquez. I am your Lima City tour guide. I've been guiding in Peru since 2006, mainly based in my capital city, the capital of Peru, Lima, my hometown. But also I had the chance of visiting Bolivia in different occasions. In some occasions, I did it as just, like traveler. In other occasions, I was able to go to the country of Bolivia to understand more, to study, to understand the culture, especially in La Paz. La Paz is, by the way, not the capital of Bolivia, but is the most populated city of Bolivia, and also it is the zone where the political power is concentrated. The capital of Bolivia is Sucre. So I live in Lima, capital of Peru. And I think it's also good to have the chance of seeing and contrasting, both, especially both important cities, La Paz and Lima, which is what I'm going to be doing today. So if you are ready, thanks for coming, and thank you for joining. If you're ready to begin with this session, well, I am more than ready, so let's start. Let's flip the camera to the other side, and we'll have now the chance of exploring those differences and similarities between these two countries. By the way, if you would like to support this project, you can donate any amount to our Patreon. Patreon is a platform that helps, supports content creators to continue creating, let's say, events or anything they love to share with the world. So all the information about my Patreon and also PayPal is in the description of this video. So, and here we have one of the most famous pictures of each country. So we have two pictures. On one side, we have the beautiful Machu Picchu, which is the jewel of Peru in terms of tourism and touristic, let's say, attractions. And on the other side, we have Uyuni. Uyuni is a sort of like a salt flat that in certain times of the year it gets like this, like a mirror. Is very pretty, and both are considered two incredible destinations in South America. So basically, Bolivia and Peru both live from tourism. Tourism is a very important activity in our countries. By the way, the noise you're hearing in the background is my doggy. She's sleeping. And so she's a French bulldog, and she usually snores. So I don't know if you can hear her, but I do. I do. So, well, going back to our topic, these are two very, very important destinations here in South America. But we are not just that. So both countries are usually seen like in a superficial way as just interesting, unique lands. But today we're going to discuss some of their most important differences as well, and well, uniqueness. So Peru and Bolivia, they are very close. They are bordering countries. We can see here part of South America, well, basically almost all South America, because if we continue southwards, well, it's just Chile, which is in the bottom over here. Let me point out Chile and Argentina also, they just project southern, and that's it. That's the very end, the very tip of South America in the bottom. So Peru and Bolivia are huge countries, actually, are very, very big. But also geographically, you can see differences that are very important. For example, indeed, Peru is bigger than Bolivia. Oh, that's completely true. And also, Bolivia lacks of ocean. Also, Bolivia is trapped in the center of South America. We refer a lot to Bolivia as the heart of South America. So, but the way how Bolivia looks nowadays is not the way how it used to be. So because we used to have a complete different reality back in the colonial days, when even the territory of Bolivia was larger, right? And during the independence of Bolivia, after they got their complete independence from Peru, first of all, separation from Peru, and later any type of control from external sources. So Bolivia had access to the ocean. So all of this section here used to belong to Bolivia. Well, so we can see that Bolivia lacks of coast. Peru does have a coast, right? We have both nations, Andes, and we have also a Amazon jungle zone, right? So that's what we have in common, right? Well, we have also another interesting element that we share, which is the Titicaca Lake, which is over here in the in the center, let's say, of all of this expansion. So we're going to have the chance of talking a bit about it, okay? So my doggy is still snoring. Just give me a second. I'm going to give her a different position so she can feel better. Okay. Come over here. Okay. Okay, she's now in a better position. So thanks, by the way, for my friends who are joining. Thank you. I hope you are able now to see and hear also very, very very clearly this exhibition, this exposition. We are talking about the differences and similarities between Peru and Bolivia. So what is another important difference in this case? So you know that these countries are very close, and also that we share a history. We're going to go in detail about the history in a moment. But Peru and Bolivia, we are different in size, right? I have positioned both maps almost the same size, but in reality, Peru is much bigger. The size of Peru is about 1.2 million kilometers, square kilometers, and Bolivia has 1 million square kilometers. So we have a difference, a considerable difference, of course, in size. Peru is the third largest country in South America. But we have also another similarity in looking at the map. For example, both countries limit with 5 countries. Also, here you can see the countries we limit with. We have Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, and Chile. And on this side, Bolivia limits with Peru, of course. We have Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, right? So, well, we are a country as Bolivia with large extension and also very, very good positioned for, let's say, trade. So here are some differences, important differences between the both countries, and also statistics, information, which I'm going to highlight the ones that I consider more important. For example, well, number one, the capital of Peru is Lima, is the more, let's say, populated, the let's say the most densely populated city in the country is our capital, right? But something curious is that the city that is more densely populated, which is La Paz, is not the capital of Bolivia, is Sucre. But also I found out that many of the cities, the important cities of Bolivia, have also almost the same, very close amount of population, like around 1 million, 2 million. Well, in Lima, we have about 12 million inhabitants. And the other cities that are the most populated in the country, they have like way less, like maybe 1 million, maybe 500,000. So the centralization in Lima is terrible. It's suffocating. So Bolivia is less centralized in comparison to Peru, in the capital. Also, another thing important, Bolivia has also several indigenous languages, as well as Peru. So we are both countries of big diversity in terms of cultures and languages. So that's a similarity. And many of the languages spoken in, indigenous languages spoken in Bolivia, are as well as spoken here in Peru. Ethnic groups, of course, we are very, very multi-ethnical, both countries, but we have in Peru a bigger percentage of people who identify as mestizo or mixed blood, and also white descendants. We have, let's say, a little bit less in Bolivia, and also we have Asian immigration in Peru. We had Asian immigration, so resulting in a more important group of Asian descents. Tusan, which are Peruvian Chinese, and Nikkei, Peruvian Japanese. But both countries also have Afro immigration, although in Bolivia, the Afro-Bolivians are a smaller group than here in Peru, but we also share that element in common, okay? In religion, we both countries are very, very religious, but Bolivia is more Catholic in percentage. It's more Catholic than Peru. And also in Peru, we have many more religious groups. And also, we do have people who don't affiliate with any religion. But in Bolivia, from my perspective also, that is less common. It is more common that people are affiliated to a religion or a faith. So they are more religious than in Peru. There are also other interesting things. For example, as I said before, population. The population of Bolivia, for example, the entire country is about 11 million, right? And the population of Peru is nearly 34 million, right? So Bolivia, the entire country, has the population we just have in Lima, in the capital. Isn't that curious? Oh, so the population of Bolivia, which is less, is also more equally spread over. So, well, the census indicate that now Lima, with nearly 12 million inhabitants, capital of Peru, is more densely populated than the most populated city of Bolivia, which is La Paz. Remember that La Paz is not the capital of Bolivia. It is, well, Sucre. But there is a reason also why La Paz is so small in terms of population is also the space. In La Paz, there's not really much space for growing wide. No? In Lima, we do have more space. We are surrounded with a desert, so that means that we have more space for expanding. Also, let's talk about prices. Prices of apartments, prices per square meter. In Lima, for example, the most expensive real estate, the most expensive square meter is in the district of San Isidro. And San Isidro's most expensive square meter is around 3,700 US dollars. So it's very, very expensive, San Isidro. It's a pretty district. By the way, if you come to Lima, you have to give it a look. It's an incredible sight, right? Being the average salary in Lima around $350 per month. So, well, you can see that not everybody can participate of that very nice lifestyle, right? So salaries are low, the average, but prices of some parts of Lima are so expensive. In contrary, we have, well, La Paz. I took again, in this case, the example of La Paz because La Paz is more densely populated, and also it's understandable that it has more social disparity, no? So in the most exclusive district of La Paz, San Miguel, the price of the square meter is about 1,300 US dollars, right? It is very, very low in comparison to the most expensive part of Lima. But something very surprising. I try to find averages of different zones, and like in this case, well, because I saw also interesting this topic of Bolivia being more decentralized, right? So La Paz is more densely populated, but let's talk about another zone that is more like located in the tropical part of Bolivia, Santa Cruz. In Santa Cruz, the average salary per month is $550. So it's more than in Lima, right? It's more than in Lima, and that is not even the capital, right? So we can also talk about the Titicaca Lake, and that's another element in common of both countries and both nations. And we definitely need to talk about Titicaca Lake because Titicaca Lake is even a place of origin of societies. Specialists believe that from the Titicaca Lake is where the Incan culture emerged. There is a legend also that refers to the emerging from an island in Titicaca Lake of the fathers of the Incan Empire. So Bolivia and Peru, they are cradles of amazing societies, like the Incas, for example, in the case of Peru, Tiahuanaco in the case of Bolivia, and it is also related with the Andes, the climate, the diversity, and more. So we share the lake. Both countries have their share of Titicaca Lake because, well, both countries depend, of course, greatly on this lake. I mean, the altiplanic or the high plateau section of Peru depends a lot on the lake. There's a lot of fishing that happens, especially here. There are communities that live exclusively from the resources that they obtain from the lake. And for Bolivia, I think it even has a little bit more importance because they don't have an ocean. They don't have access to the ocean. So for them, Titicaca Lake is their biggest lake, and also it's their sense of pride as a nation. It is related also with the lake, right? So the lake is divided almost equally. No? I've been able to find data that says that about 56% of the lake belongs to Peru, no? And 44% to Bolivia. If you wanted to know, how is the share. So during the Viceroyalty, the period of the Spanish domination of these territories of South America and also many other of Central and even North America, Peru and Bolivia were administrated by the same authority, and they were also part of the same territory. So Bolivia is born, or it appears in colonial maps as part of the Viceroyalty of Peru. But if you look at the maps, for example, I'm presenting to you, you can see there's an evolution and even a separation between Bolivia and Peru that took many, many years. Like over the course of the colonial period that lasted 300 years, also South America, especially the territories that belong to Spain, reshaped a lot because these were huge portions of land. It was extremely difficult, even impossible, to dominate such land, vast territory, with just one authority. So that's how, little by little, other viceroyalties emerged. The Viceroyalty of Nueva Granada, that eventually became the territories where nowadays Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador are located. The Viceroyalty of Rio de la Plata, which is nowadays Argentina, mainly Argentina, Uruguay as well. And, well, we had also capitanías, which were territories that were not as important in terms of their own administration, but they were also administrated remotely by the Spanish ruler. So here you can see the map of South America, Bolivia and Peru together. But this structure, this administrative structure, didn't last long. And for the period of the independence, for example, we have already different authorities, and we also have, let's say, a general feeling of separation from Peru. So that's why, well, that country eventually became Bolivia, and the name of Bolivia comes from Bolivar, because he was the person who also imposed the independence of that territory and the creation of a country separated from Peru, separated from Argentina, separated from any other territories, right? So in both countries, the social structures were established, well, like the way how the Spanish established these structures everywhere in the dominions. There was a stratification of the society that put on top of the pyramid, the social pyramid, the Spanish, the so-called peninsulares. So we also have that in common, because that way or perception of who is the ruler, who you should trust the most, who is the most educated, that comes really from the colonial experience and understanding of societies. Also, in the colonial times, they were on top the peninsulares, the Spanish, below were the criollos, or the children of the Spanish born in America, so they were Americanos, or they were American because they were born here. And then we had below the mestizos, the mixed blood, we had the indigenous, and in the bottom we had the mulattoes, the black, the Africans. So we had the society structurized in that way. And after the independence, well, those prejudices continue. So we are trying, of course, to debunk all of that. But it is very rooted in the societies. So it's a process, no? And this we have in both nations. Also, another interesting element I would like to bring to conversation is how much the Viceroyalty of Peru depended on Bolivia, because Bolivia, although it's sort of like trapped inside in the heart of South America, as we say, Bolivia is very, very rich in minerals, and in particular in silver. In the colonial times especially, well, now also there's lithium and they exploit that, but back in the colonial times, silver was the reason of the importance of that land. And well, silver, which we can find silver in different parts of South America and Peru also, we have our silver mines, but there was a zone that was super, super rich in silver, and that was Potosí. So Potosí was much more cosmopolitan than any city in the Americas in the times when Potosí was founded and was established in the colonial times, most cosmopolitan, most densely populated than European cities, for example, and well, it was very rich, right? So, but the silver has to go out through somewhere, right? So initially the silver came also to the ports of Peru. So that's how it exited the country and then went in direction to Europe. And also you need mercury for the process of extraction of silver. And well, we had here in Peruvian side that product. So that's why there was a need, let's say, from both sides, no? From Potosí with the mercury of Peru, and vice versa, of course. No, we needed the silver of Potosí here in this territory, right? So there was a dependency between both lands. The shape of both countries over time. You know, so how Peru and how Bolivia have changed over the course of their history. Both nations used to look very different even after their independences. For example, in the case of Peru, that you can recognize on the left-hand side, you can see that the nowadays shape of Peru, which is the one in white, varies a lot with its largest extension during the time of the Viceroyalty, and also its initial desire extension after the independence, because there was something called Treaty of Utiposidetis that like allowed the new nations, that just born nations, to keep the borders that these lands had before the independence, also given by the Viceroyalty period. So Peru used to be very, very large, and we have lost a lot of territory. There are also lots of disputes about, for example, the look of this map with countries like Ecuador, for example, that they also, using another treaties, they said that the actual land of Peru was much smaller in the north section of the country, and that actually we have taken land that originally belonged to Ecuador. So these are, like conversations and problems that we had, for a long time with different countries that even went or ended up in wars, in battles. Okay, so but let's say this territory in colonial Peruvian maps, okay? So I just want to make very, very clear this, because Ecuadorian maps probably will say something different, but in Peruvian maps of the interpretation of the borders, well, this was the shape of Peru before the independence. And look also how long it used to be. In the bottom, this land now, well, belongs to Chile. Lots of the territory in the jungle, by the way, was not very well determined because nobody lived there back then. If nowadays few people live in the jungle zones, imagine back in those days. The people who lived there were indigenous groups, but colonos or Europeans who established cities, they were almost like none, so non-existent there. So that's why these territories were very hard to shape and even to consolidate as part of the nation, or the jungle section. So on the other side, you have Bolivia. Bolivia's nowadays territory is this white section you see over there, and all the rest of the territory you see here used to belong to this territory. Well, this is according to different treaties and different, let's say, that periods in which we have also given land to Bolivia. Well, that territory changed also over the course of time. And most of the reshaping of both countries happened in, of course, recent times, no? Like at the end of the 19th century and the beginnings of the 20th century. Okay, so, well, here you can see, if you were wondering how the flags of both countries look like, also they are very, very different. And let's talk about the War of the Pacific. The War of the Pacific is also a time that, because it in a way also brought both countries into a cooperation that was more like a desperate cooperation, because we were being invaded by Chile. Well, it was a time also in which we both nations fought, and we both also lost land. Okay, so that's another similarity. The War of the Pacific, the period of the War of the Pacific, affected deeply both countries. Well, Bolivians will definitely say that the way how this war affected them was much more deeper than the way how this war affected Peru. We both lost land, but Bolivia lost all their access to the ocean. So they have no coast because of that war, no coast at all. Well, of course, we have a long stripe of coast in Peru, so, but losing Tarapacá, losing Arica was terrible for Peru's economy, and also Peru's identity. Well, well, this is also a topic that I will be probably talking more in depth later in another occasion. I just gave here some information, general information about the War of the Pacific, if you wish to also take note of that, or make a screenshot. But we are going to come back to this topic also soon. But remember, we're talking about similarities and differences between Bolivia and Peru. The War of the Pacific affected both countries terribly, no? So this is also another similarity between these two countries. There was also a Confederación Peruano-Boliviana, or Peruvian-Bolivian Confederation. And this is something, well, not in fact a similarity or difference, but it also helps me to portray here a perspective or a point of view about Bolivia and Peru, of nations that even for a long time were perceived as one. And people from the time of the 19th century, from the time of even the early 20th century, that believed that we were one nation and we shouldn't be separated. But because we already were separated by administrations and rules, not really by culture. Cultures are very alike, but they were different identities. So the only way to bring them back together was through a confederation. right? But this confederation, which was created, of course, after the independence of both countries, after the consolidation of both nations, right? This confederation lived short, right? Only a period of 3 years. It was official. And it was very difficult to consolidate something like such a union between such big countries. Well, but the size of both countries, if we still had that confederation nowadays, that union of these lands, we would be bigger than Argentina, right? So probably will be the second biggest country of South America. The biggest country in South America is Brazil, okay? So will be huge and also very, very powerful, a very powerful land. And that's one of the reasons why it didn't thrive, because it was not just the fact that there were people within both nations that didn't like the idea of this unity, because they prefer, like separation, like you are Bolivian, I am Peruvian. I don't want to have, this awkward like union. Also, there were different interests of people who didn't like the idea of having Bolivian businesses also now being treated as Peruvians. Also, there were neighboring countries who didn't like this union because it was dangerous. It was converting us into a very powerful nation, super nation. No? So that's the reason why eventually, due to external influences as well as internal, this confederation collapsed 3 years after it was created. No? So it was created in 1836 officially, and it disappeared in 1839. Santa Cruz, very important hero of the independence period, and also very important man for Bolivia, was the promoter of this union. Okay, and also mentioning about how the map of these two countries would look like. Look at this. Look at this massive country, right? So a little picture of how South America looks like, for example. This is Brazil. So this confederation of these two countries together will definitely convert us into the second largest country in South America. That place is now for Argentina. Peru is the third largest country of South America. But also this country will have access to different kinds of resources, a much wider jungle Amazon section also. So it's just dreaming in how this country would be together. It's incredible. Like, I don't know in this moment what would be the position of Peru in the world in terms of economy. But also the territory was way too big to be led by just one leader, by one man, right? So Santa Cruz had the opinion that this confederation should be divided in three portions, in three lands, right? So give a look to this, right? We have this, on the other side. You have here the northern portion of the country, the upper Peru, right? This section over here, which by the way, Lima is not is not ruled by this section over here. Lima is out of the central part of Peru, the central portion of Peru, and we have here this southern part of Peru, which will be the territories of nowadays Bolivia. So there were also leaders for each part. So there would be sort of like three presidents at the same time, and one president for the whole confederation, right? Well, and now we have to talk about the food. And I think this is also another topic that is interesting, and well, every person will consider their food the best, I think, no? Like, we Peruvians are very proud of our food, and Bolivians are also very, very proud of their food. For example, I wanted to bring three dishes to our conversation that I feel they are very similar. Okay, so I am not going to rate food like which one is best, which one is not, because that really depends on the person. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the same happens with food. So, but I think these dishes create more connections between both lands because of the similarity, and probably even their origins are in common. So I think the top dishes, that three top dishes that I will be sharing with you today are, of course, number one, we're going with the lomo saltado of Peru and the pique macho of Bolivia. By the way, the capital of Bolivian gastronomy is Cochabamba. So Cochabamba has lots of delicious dishes. And pique macho, which is one of the most popular dishes of Bolivia, it has lots of elements that are very, very similar to lomo saltado. One of the biggest differences is that our lomo saltado, which has Asian influence, that has we say Chinese influence because it's saute, stir fried beef with French fries that usually are fried aside, and they are added just at the end. So this beef is sauteed with tomatoes, with onions. It has soy sauce in it. It has chilies when it's prepared. It comes very juicy to the plate, and is served with rice and French fries. In the case of the pique macho, well, we have some of the most similar, products. For example, we have the tomatoes, which are cut differently, much more wider. The onions, more like onion rings, let's say. We also have beef there. We have sausages also, hot dogs in most of the cases. Boiled egg comes there, and usually people like this dish with a chili cream or chili sauce, which makes it also very tasty. Okay, so we have these two kings of the gastronomy of both countries, lomo saltado from Peru and pique macho from Bolivia. And I found also a similarity, like they are, to me, like almost exactly the same. Well, there are maybe some few like differences in the preparation, but and they are named differently also, but they have the same origin, and there must be some, let's say, a Spanish indigenous fusion. Relleno boliviano and papa rellena from Peru, right? So they are both this little sort of like bowls of mashed potato, like that are deep fried, but inside they contain a sauce made from beef. It can be also made from chicken. In Bolivia, in particular, Bolivia uses a lot of chicken as a stuffing, or beef. In Peru, we mainly use beef, right? Both have a boiled egg, and say onions, so it's very, very tasty. So they have different names, but in my opinion they are the same, similar. And here, another dish that I was very surprised that also they were so identical in both countries. And Bolivians also agree that, well, anticucho seems that is Peruvian even for them, like older, or let's say for more time prepared here in Peru, and later that food went to Bolivia and was, like it became very popular there. So we definitely agree here in Peru that anticucho was born in Peru and was born probably in Lima also. This food is basically beef heart, marinated in different herbs and different chilies, and for a long space of time, for about 8 hours, in some cases overnight, and then is fried on, let's say, a grill, preferably if it's fire is cooked on charcoal. The flavor is much better. And so what are the differences? I think there are two very important differences, because also they use different sauces as well as we do for sort of like marinating the meat. But the pieces of anticucho in Bolivia are smaller. The cuts are smaller in comparison to the ones of Peru. So that probably requires more time of the anticucho to be in the grill, to be cooked. But also another thing is that in Peru we traditionally use these skewers made from wood, let's say, or bamboo pieces. To be honest, it's more like bamboo. So they are disposable. And in Bolivia, when they serve anticucho, they don't serve it with a stick, because the people who prepare anticucho, they use these skewers of metallic skewers. So they kept using them over and over. And when they serve to you the anticucho comes already without the skewer in the plate, right? Another thing interesting is that in Bolivia, they use different types of sauces, like chili creams, than in Peru. So that also makes a difference. Well, this is a controversial one, La Diablada, and we're now talking about folklore, no? So we just left behind the food, and we pass now into a darker, more field, because Bolivians, they are very protective with this folklore. La Diablada is a dance, is a tradition also that makes very proud Bolivians, and they defend La Diablada as their heritage. In Peru, we also have the tradition of dancing La Diablada in Puno. So maybe you remember that Peru and Bolivia, they have borders, right? And the border in common is the one that is also associated with Titicaca Lake. That's the high plateau. I do believe that the answer to this big deal, although nobody, I think, will be completely satisfied, nor Bolivians, nor Peruvians, but the answer to this deal is that La Diablada belongs to both nations. Why? Because La Diablada was danced before those nations existed. It's like it will be completely unfair to say people from Puno. Puno is the portion of the Peruvian territory that limits with Bolivia, that they have been dancing La Diablada for hundreds of years, to say, no, you should not dance it anymore, because, well, now that belongs to Bolivia. And what about their tradition of hundreds of years dancing it, right? It's like nowadays, the Bolivian anticucho and the Peruvian anticucho, or the Chilean pisco and the Peruvian pisco, right? So, of course, Bolivians, they fight for at least like having this point very clear, that they are the land where the Diablada was originated. And from my investigation, I can definitely say that yes, it seems that the Diablada was born originally in Bolivian side, but it was still, continued, like spread over in Peruvian side for hundreds of years. So not just for 2-3 years, no, for hundreds of years. So it's now part of the identity of both countries. So we're going now to summarize today's event with some highlights that I have also put all together in a list. So let's go first with the similarities. So, well, the geography. We are Andino countries. We are Andean countries. No? We share mountains. We share also the jungle, which the Amazon jungle, the Amazon rainforest, it starts, in the low mountains that go to in the direction of the jungle of the Amazon. So they are both countries pretty much the same, right? We are countries that share geography, and we are countries that share, of course, indigenous traditions. So we both countries, for example, have in common the use of Quechua and Aymara as official languages, right? And Quechua and Aymara are languages that have been spoken in both sides since ancient times, right? And they are also associated with the appearance of incredible cultures. I said before that we are cradles of cultures. Like Peru is most famous as the cradle of the Incas, and Bolivia, Tiahuanaco, for example, no? So it's such a fascinating history in common. And we cannot, let's say, like say that one country doesn't need of the other. In terms of archaeology, it's impossible. We were not divided in the pre-Hispanic times. We were not divided at all, right? We have colonial history in common. We have, for example, the history of the Spanish invasion, the Spanish conquest, and the Spanish ruling that determine who we are nowadays. Remember, we are both Catholic countries. Prioritarily, we are Catholic countries, right? So that comes from the Spanish influence, right? The language that we speak in common, which is the official language of both countries, besides the indigenous ones, is the Spanish. So we also have that in common. And a cultural heritage that is very rich and makes us very unique. Things in similarity that we have that are even pre-Hispanic, but also it makes us unique in our own ways. Cuisine, Peru and Bolivia have incredible cuisines. Although Peruvian cuisine is more popular, is more famous, is more in trend, Bolivian cuisine is also very unique. It has lots of different influences. We have in Peru the African influence as the most important, and they do have African influence too. The only thing they are lacking of is maybe more promotion around what's their culinary, but I'm sure they will be able at some point to strive in terms of their gastronomy. So you know, Ray, that we are both religious countries, mainly Catholic, but we also have our indigenous traditions and religions. So that's also another similarity we share. We are both countries that are very popular destinations for tourists. As I said in the beginning, Machu Picchu for us, and the Uyuni salt flats for Bolivia, right? But we are so much more. Both countries, we have lots of off the beaten path destinations, and so on. So we are countries that are in constant improvement. We have been facing challenges also recently, so that also makes us very, very similar in that terms, right? And we have a good relation between these two countries. We are part of the Andean community. Bolivia and Peru, we are Andean community countries, meaning that I can go to Bolivia with my ID. I don't need a passport to cross to go that country. And the same happens with Bolivians. And that is also related with the fact that we are dependent, mutually dependent, because we also let's say, sell a lot of products every day. Lots of products are crossed from Bolivia to Peru and vice versa, right? Differences. Now let's talk about the differences. You know already that we are different countries in terms of sizes. Bolivia is smaller than Peru, and also we have a population in Peru that is up to 3 times bigger than the one in Bolivia. So if you want to live in a country that is less populated, that has more space for you, and you just have only 2 options, Peru and Bolivia, well, Bolivia will be definitely a country to take in consideration, right? Economy. No, the economy of Bolivia and the economy of Peru are very different. Although we have lots of resources in common, Peru has diversified more its offering. And also because we have the ocean that helps us a lot. The coastal valleys are where we produce the most of our crops in this moment, especially using technologies as the drop technology of irrigation that was imported from Israel. It helps Peruvian producers to create, like lands perfect for production of blueberries, for example, right? We are number ones in the world in exportation of blueberries in Peru. Bolivia is more into mining, and they are more stick with that, and also they have that limitation of, like the exportation of the products because they don't have a port, right? Well, you know already that in Peru and Bolivia we speak more languages than just Spanish. But in Bolivia, there is a higher percentage of people who speak indigenous languages, which is wonderful. Like, we should imitate that. Here in Lima, we were for more time, for example, more like avant-garde, and we were always trying to get all the influences from Europe. We were more open to receive influences from outside than respecting our own traditions, right? It was much better that people spoke French or English, that the indigenous traditions, and that's why people left their own traditions aside to assimilate, especially that's in the big cities. No? So we are trying to revert that in the small cities. That's very good, right? I think it's not too late. Peru is more diverse in terms of ethnicity. We are a more like multi-ethnical country than Bolivia. And once again, the reason is because the coast. We receive lots of immigrations through our history from Asia, from Japan, from Europe, all because we had this big door to the world that was the ports. The ports like Callao, for example, ports in the north, ports in the south. Basically, Callao for us has been very important. So we got lots of immigration in the 19th century. So we are more diverse, right? And you know already that religion is predominant in both countries, but higher in Bolivia, more, let's say, respected, the religion, Catholic religion in Bolivia than in Peru. And, well, cuisine, Peru is one step forward in terms of the internationalization of the options, no? So we are international now. We are in every big country. There's one restaurant of Peruvian food, something that Bolivia still needs to do, because I know Bolivia wants also to escalate into that level, and that's wonderful. And I definitely would like to see Bolivia's food out there in Dubai, like as we are, like we have restaurants in Dubai, we have restaurants in all the big cities in Europe, in all North America, in Asia, so we are everywhere, right? So thank you so much for your participation, amigos. If you wish to support this project, you can donate any amount on PayPal, and also you can support this channel becoming my Patreon. So if you wish to be part of this project, that will be super, super. And also, let me show you which ones are the events for the next, say, lectures that I will be doing. I'm doing once per week lectures. Gracias, Natalie. Thank you, dear. So, coming soon, we have the worst earthquakes in Peruvian history and the tragic history of the last Incas of Peru. You can also give a look to the complete full-length lectures of the Inca writing, Tocapus, Quipus, and more, and also this event, differences and similarities between Peru and Bolivia on Patreon. Those full-length videos are exclusive on YouTube for everyone who wants to learn a bit more about Peruvian history. So let me flip the camera to this side and let me say bye to you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for your participation. It's been really a pleasure to have you. And as always, well, if you want to hear me saying something about this particular topic or discussing about this other topic, just let me know it, please. Send your suggestions, comment at the end of this video. And well, thanks a lot for coming here and sharing a like also. Don't forget to follow this channel and to subscribe, activate also the bell for notifications for my upcoming events. Well, see you soon. Thank you so much for being there and take care. Have a lovely, lovely weekend ahead. Today is Thursday, so well, enjoy your weekend and we'll see you next week, okay? Take care. Bye-bye. Until next time. Ciao.